Welcome, Semple Elementary, to the Personalized Learning Action Network Plan Design Day. I'm Joe McKim.
And I'm Maddie Shepard.
And we've designed this day with you in mind. We're going to start by walking through this slide deck and what your day will look like. So our agenda begins with a personalized learning rubric check-in on the focus area that, based on your needs, we've determined will be what you should be working on today. Then we're going to give you some inspiration, things to look at and explore, give you some choices in how you apply that inspiration with some team design time. Then we'll have some individualized learning where each person in your team can choose what they would like to learn about today through some traditional PD before we break for lunch. After lunch, you'll come back to your team design time and say, hey, we all went to these different sessions. How can we bring that into our work from the morning? And end with a WOOP, which is wish, opportunity, obstacle, and plan. And then we'll share out your WOOP with the rest of the schools that are here today and get some feedback.
Because everyone has a personalized slide deck based on the needs that each team has identified, as well as some of the needs that Joe and I have identified, and the day will be largely self-paced. So it's really important that each team identifies a timekeeper just to make sure that everyone's got enough time to get to that design time and really go deep with your action planning. So please make sure you identify a timekeeper before you guys jump in to inspiration today.
And you have the link to the slide deck so you can move through it at your, own pace, but we have included some times for each of these parts of the agenda. So if you want to stay on track and make sure you get to the design and time for planning, you want to keep track of that time. So the first thing we did is we looked at an area for you, which is learner pathways. And so let's start with,
Go back, or is this, we're good? I'll cut this out. Let's start. What? Just keep it on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'll cut this out while we're doing it.
Cut this out. Well, I didn't know if you wanted me to go ahead and show the rubric while you're talking about it, or no? Or just stay on the agenda?
Well, I think while I'm talking about, we've designed an area. Well, we've already talked about the agenda. We're now into this part.
So I'll just move. Okay.
We've talked about, now we're introducing, with your team, we're going to focus on the core component of learner pathways, starting with 2 rubrics or continuums for you to self-assess where your team is. This is phase 1 and phase 2 of the learner continuum for instructional rigor. So we'd like for you to pause here and take some time to go through these 2 continuums. Where are you individually and where are you as a team in providing varied learning experiences for students, as well as differentiating learning objectives for students so that not every student has the same objective every day. After you've taken some time discussing the continuums, go to the next slide, which will then give you some look-fors and what we might see if you're beginning and developing versus practicing and achieving for both the varied learning experiences as well as the
differentiated learning objectives.
Right, did we only do the 1?
Yeah, because we don't want to go on the second level yet. Or we could do the second one.
No, we only want them to do the 1. I just lost track.
Yeah, that's okay.
I didn't talk about that appropriately.
Okay. Well, let's start. Let's go back and do it again.
Because what we want to say is we've given you phase 1 and phase 2, but we really want to, so you can see what they are, but we want you to really dig in with phase 1. The next slide, blah, blah, blah.
All right. So a little bit about the check-in.
So for the check-in, we're looking at 2 continuums for instructional rigor, which are phase 1 and phase 2. In phase 1, we're looking at varied learning experiences. How are you individually and as a team providing varied learning experiences for your students? In phase 2, we're looking at differentiated learning objectives. How can we have different objectives or learning targets for each student based on where they are? We know that we wanted to share both of these phases with you, although we recognize that we're just getting started, and so we're living in phase 1. So let's zoom in after your team has had some conversation about these 2 continuums to phase 1.
Zoom. So looking at phase one, we see that the rubric is on a continuum. So we have look-fors on the left under the beginning and developing areas. These are some things that might be happening in your classroom or in your planning practices that would indicate that this is where you are on the continuum. And then on the right, beneath the practicing and achieving parts of the rubric, are some look-fors as well. Again, you might see these in your classroom or in your planning practices. So once we identify using the look-fors and using what you know about your team and your children and your classrooms, identify where we are, and we're going to work and plan to push ourselves to the next level.
All right, so the next thing on the agenda is the inspiration or the accessing information part of your personalized learning journey today. Your inspiration overview, we've given you 5 things for you to explore, access, and engage with information. And we'll take a minute here to talk about each one.
So first, we have some reading from one of our personalized learning Bibles, How to Personalize Learning from Barbara Bray and Kathleen McClaskey. Chapter 2 is all about multiple pathways within your learning design. And so we have this chapter for you to read and annotate, and then discuss with your team some major points of learning, which then could give you inspiration, ideas, or some direction when we get into our planning and implementation phase.
Your next inspiration is promoting personalized learning through those learner pathways. We've given you several links here to a video you can watch, a sample planning document for various learner pathways, another video that shows customized learning paths at work, and then we want you, after you explore some of those, to discuss with your team the implications of what you've seen.
Thirdly, we have a piece of inspiration around Genius Hour or passion projects. Those two terms are used interchangeably. They basically mean the same thing. And so we have a Genius Hour overview, just a quick video from John Spencer around what Genius Hour is and isn't, and some of the great things that can happen in your classroom and with your learners after implementing something like this. We also have an intro slide deck. I would like to point out slide 5 offers a suggested structure. We'll let you get into that later. We have some resources and templates for you to get started just to help build the system in your classroom. And then we also have some examples from right here in JCPS from Breckenridge Franklin Elementary. So those are some videos of some students sharing their passion projects.
All right, your next inspiration is share your learning. Once students have started accessing information in all the ways that make sense to them, what do we do with that? So we've given you some inspiration of a video or two around presentations of learning, a rubric for grades 3 through 5 for presentations, some ideas around student-led conferences, and there are some other toolkits at the website Share Your Learning. So as you explore these different tools and videos, again, discuss with your team the implications for how you might provide varied opportunities for students to demonstrate or present their learning.
And next, we've got learning playlists. So this is something we see in a lot of personalized learning classrooms, and we've offered some different ways for you to explore what this could look like in your classroom today. We have a case study about how it works at one particular school called Valor. We have some sample playlists for you to look at to see how those could be set up. We have a blog on balancing learner choice with the learning needs of a learner using the playlist. A blog on designing playlists using various data sources, and then finally a tutorial that's geared towards an elementary audience.
All right, and so those are your inspirations for today to engage with the information at your own pace among your team. The next part of our agenda is choice and application. Now that you have some additional information and inspiration, it's time to start designing.
So we put together a few options for how you might start to implement some of the pieces of learning that you experience during the inspiration phase. So we have 4 opportunities, 4 options for application today, and we ask that you choose one. We have one where you would choose an element of variation to integrate into your learning unit design. That'll be derived from Table 2.1 and how to personalize learning. The second option is to bring some authenticity in your classroom by inviting community partners or authentic audiences to provide feedback to students throughout their learning process, as well as share in a demonstration of learning near the end of a learning unit. We have an opportunity for planning and implementing a Genius Hour or Passion Project unit. Again, using some of the structures that you experienced and getting some ideas from the inspiration portion of your day today. And then finally, the fourth option is to design a learning playlist for an upcoming unit in your classroom.
All right, so that, whichever task you choose, will keep you quite busy because we're never finished with our work and planning. But at some point, we have to stop, so make sure your timekeeper is keeping you guys on track. The next part of our day is individual learning, where you get to choose from one of 3 different learning modules, and we'll share more about those later. After that, we'll break for lunch. You have those in there. Never mind. After that, we'll break for lunch and come back. Once we come back, you'll be in your teams again, where you can share what you learned in those breakout sessions before lunch and how they may impact the design and planning that you started earlier in the morning.
So we'll have a little bit of time for teams to synthesize the group learning from the morning as well as the individual learning that took place right before lunch. And then finally, we'll put our own demonstration of learning together in the form of a WOOP. What is a WOOP, you ask? That's a great question. We've got the answer for you here. So each team will be completing a WOOP in order to share out and help capture the work as you move forward. The W is a wish. The first O is a outcome. The third O is an obstacle that you anticipate encountering. And then the P, those are only 2 O's, the second O. The P is a plan. What's your plan for implementing your learning from today? We'll be sharing this out with the group with a really quick informal feedback protocol during our share out section on the agenda as we begin to wrap up.
As you're working through your WOOP, you guys can design and how you share that, how you demonstrate that, any way you like. You can type right into the slide that's available in the slide deck. You can create a chart on chart paper. You can act it out and do a skit. You can present the information any way you like. So be creative.
As long as the W, the O, and the P are present, you can demonstrate your learning and your plan in any way that you choose. After our share out, we've got some time for reflection, just to kind of get a read on the day and see what we can do to improve as PD providers, catch any questions or need to knows as we move forward, and wrap up our day.
All right, that's it. Now you're ready to get started.